Howdy, hey, hello. Let's get on to the last part for week one. We're going to look at P05 reinforcement plate. This was most likely your homework for the week. It's nothing really too peculiar compared to what we've done already. It's just possibly a different use, and it'll force you to think a little bit about how you're going to do it. And I'd probably suggest have a go at doing it yourself before you jump into this video. And just give yourself the challenge. You'll definitely learn a lot more from that. Otherwise, we'll just go over now a brief way on how we could do it. So if we take a look at P05, it's got these two sort of washer looking faces each end, and then this brace traveling between those two ends. We can see that each end has an equal diameter, and it's got an AB logo, or AB labeling, datum points, like we can see on P03. So let's assume the distance between those is also 90 millimeters. Alright, so let's jump across to SolidWorks now. We'll create a new part, we'll save it, we'll do all of that. And we'll start modeling this. So create new part. Okay. Well, off the bat as always, Control S for save. This was P05, was it? P05 reinforcement plate. P05, save, very good. Come up to document properties, file properties, I should say. Add a description. Reinforcement plate. Hit save. And let's start a sketch. So, it's very symmetrical. I think what I'm going to do to start is draw one line down the center of the part. Probably mate the origin off to this center point somewhere. Add my circles, add some more circles, add a couple of lines, and then we'll have a look at something called the trim tool, which we'll use to sort of delete, or, it's a lot like an eraser, and take out the parts we don't want. So then we just have a nice solid shape that we can use the sheet metal tool to give a bit of depth to. So let's have a look at that. I'll jump into my right plane, and I'm going to say sketch. And I will begin with that center line I was talking about. So here's a center line tool. I got that just from the drop down menu there. And I'll draw a nice vertical center line, something like that. And I'm going to select the line, select my origin, and first thing I'll do is place a midpoint relation on that. So now this line is locked by its midpoint down to the origin. That's a nice bit of definition. And I can also make that vertical. Now I'm going to place my two holes, my circles, on these far points. I know the distance between those is 90 millimeters, so I might just put my smart dimension on that now. Select the line, type in the dimension I want, and hit tick OK. Now I'm going to draw those circles I've been talking about. So I will draw a big one, and a little one, and then I'll draw another big one and another little one. The next step is I can select my two big ones. See how I used drag and select there? That's a sort of nifty little tool, just like that. And I'll make those two circles equal. Then I will select my two little circles, and I'll make those two circles equal. And I'm just going to put some dimensions on these while I can. I will place a dimension on that inner circle, which I believe will be something like 10 mil, again, for that 10 mil bolt that we're using, the M10 bolt. And then I'll place a dimension on this outer circle, which I think is going to be a lot less than that. Let's try something maybe like 25. We'll bring that right down in size. And yeah, it's probably about right. So now I want to add that section that joins these. And the way I'm going to do that is draw a single straight line that passes through all of that. And I just want to make sure that line's vertical. It looks like it's on a bit of an angle. So if I want to make sure it's vertical, I'll select the line and I'll place a vertical relation on that line. Now I want a line on the exact same point on the other side of my center line. Now, lucky me, because it's a center line, I can use it to mirror objects. So I'll select my center line, I'll hold control, I'll select my outside line as well, and I'm going to use the mirror entities under the sketch toolbar, and that should just create a nice mirrored version of that line. Now, that's still underdefined. It's moving a lot. So I can see the first issue I've got there is that there's no width dimension there. So I'll come into Smart Dimension. Now I troubleshooted that just by clicking and dragging the blue stuff. That's the best thing to do. If clicking and dragging a blue line doesn't work, if it doesn't move, then come in, try dragging the points. You know, just come at creatively and from different angles to try move it, make it move. And then once you make it move, you'll understand what kind of relation or dimension you need to lock it off. In this case, we needed a width. So I might just make that 12. It wasn't dimensioned, so it's just going to be a guess, really, for now. All right, and we're still underdefined. So I can see that these little endpoints are still blue, so that's not good. They're still getting dragged around, so I could probably just drop that endpoint on my circle, and I could probably do the same thing on the bottom as well. Just drop that endpoint over the circle there. Now the final little bit of housekeeping I'm going to do is I'll come into Trim Entities. I'm going to use Power Trim, which is like an eraser tool, and that way I can click and drag across a part, and anything that falls under that grey line will get deleted except for relations or dimensions. So see how I drag it through, and all it's erasing is that sketch geometry. I want to be careful not to pull it across my center line, because it will delete my center line, and then my sketch will lose a lot of that information, which is currently defined by that center line. All right, so there is our nice little shape. I'll hit close dialog box. I will say come back to my sheet metal tools, which are still open from before. If you've closed those or you want to remember how to open them, you right click anywhere in the empty space of your top toolbar and select sheet metal to turn that toolbar on. So let's use a base flange tab. Again, 2mm thickness, that's all quite good. Let's just hit OK. There's no reason to touch any of those settings. And once that loads and finishes and processes, let's just hit Control S to save that. Now, you know, it wasn't on that drawing, but while we're feeling fancy and good about ourselves, we finish off week one. Let's put a little bit of text across this thing. Just, you know, expressing how much we love our CAD class. So, I'm going to right click and say sketch. Now, it's a bit hard for me to write and imagine text top to bottom like that. So if I hold Alt and press the left or right arrow key, I can see I can actually rotate my view around on that sketch. So I'm going to come into a view, something like that should be fine. See how I am in a sketch. And I'm going to, first of all, create a center line. And this center line is going to be used to place our writing on. If you think way back to primary school when you did your handwriting exercises and you had to, you know, rule your lines across the page so that you could write on a nice straight line, it's very similar for SolidWorks. It needs some geometry, some kind of reference to lock its text down to. All right, I might offset that from the center by about 3mm. And then that's because I'm going to place a 6mm tall piece of text across my pulley. So let's, now that we've got that, it's a nice fully defined line, we will turn on our text, which is this little button here in the sketch toolbar. Under curves, we'll select that line we just created. Now, it doesn't have to be linear. SolidWorks can also write on, you know, ellipses, round edges. It can follow really any curve you give it within reason. Under text, let's decide what we want to say. It can say anything you want for this assignment. You can do your name. You can say CAD is the best with a Z. Why not? That looks awful. All right, use document font. I'm going to untick that because I want to be able to change the font. This means sort of just stick to defaults, don't change anything. That's not what I'm looking for. I want to change the font up because we're designers and we know better. And I might find a nice, beautiful font. Something as beautiful even as, what have we got here? Or Elephant. That looks terrible. Something like that would be excellent. What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? Oh, these are all too nice. Now, I'm avoiding things like this, these curly fonts, because SolidWorks tends to have trouble with them. Often the vectors, the lines in them overlap a little bit, and that gets very confusing. Oh, that's just hideous. Let's have a go. Let's see if we can use this one. So I'm going to choose Goudy Stout. Go to regular, and under units, I'm going to change that to 6 millimeters. Now that is the height of my text, and I want that height to be 6 millimeters, which I talked about before. All right, so I can use my settings here to center align my text. I can also decide which side it sits on, and I can flip it backwards and forwards. Now that's a bit too big at the moment. We can see it's overlapping at the end, so I can use the scale tool just to scale that text down a bit. And I can see I'm not going to get away with this font because either I need to use less text, which let's say I love CAD, so that I can fit it on without the text overlapping. If the text overlaps, SolidWorks just won't know what to do with it. It'll be a bit too confused. And I'll come to, I can hit OK, save my text, and I'll use an extrude cut feature to cut this text into my metalwork, like might happen in the real world if we were using a laser etch feature to laser etch some text. Now that thickness, I'm just going to make it, you know, maybe 1/100th or 1,000th of a mil, because laser etching is really not that deep, and in my head right now, that's how I'm imagining I'm going to put this text onto my metal part. It makes sense to do that, because we could just extrude cut it, we could just laser cut it, and then while it's still on the same machine, we could laser etch it as well. And there I have my finished part with a little bit of text written on it, and it's all looking good. So excellent, congratulations. I'll see you in week 2.